Hi! A while ago I did the try a chapter tag to figure out which books I was going to take on my holiday to Crete. And I've been back for quite a while now, so I figured it was time to share with you which ones I actually ended up reading and what I thought of them. But before I get into that, I quickly wanted to let you know as well that I am chairing some events with my friends who have published books. First of all, there is The Hormone Diaries by Hannah Whitten. I am chairing her events in Birmingham and Nottingham on the 5th and the 8th of July. Very soon. If you're there, please come and see us. And then I'm also, it's upside down, chairing an event with my friend Lex, who's written You're Crushing It. And we're doing an event in London on the 9th. It's gonna be a pretty busy week, but I hope to see you there. Also, I have a timer going on my phone right now because I am currently trying to bake a vegan cheese. Don't ask, but it's in the oven. I need to finish this video before it needs to come out. Starting off with, I guess, the one that's most controversial in my mind because I was the most confused about what I thought of it. And it was Autumn by Ali Smith. This is an author who I've seen speak loads of times, and every time I see her speak, I just think she's incredible. I've gathered quite a few of her books now. Still hadn't read any of them, so this was number one. The first part of a series of 4 books covering different topics, but kind of all around a different season. This one was supposed to be the Brexit book. It starts off in a kind of dreamlike state with a man washing up on the beach and realizing he's dead. Then it kind of switches to a younger girl and her neighbor and the younger girl's mom. You also see her when she's more grown up and the friendship that she's formed with this older neighbor. And in between there is this kind of Brexit narrative. It's kind of happening in the background. People talking about the vote and immigration and things like that. There were a lot of things I loved about this book. I thought the characters were interesting, and I love that the way that they're publishing these books is that they're coming out so quickly so they can be like super culturally relevant. I thought there was so much excellent just like dry humor, like interactions between, for example, the main character being at the post office, the people at the post office on purpose being very difficult and her not understanding why the rules are the way they are. I mean, the first sentence is excellent. It was the worst of times. It was the worst of times. This chapter is the chapter that Ali read when she came to visit the Penguin offices. All across the country there was misery and rejoicing. All across the country what had happened whipped about by itself. All across the country people looked up Google, what is EU? All across the country, people looked up Google, move to Scotland. All across the country, people looked up Google, Irish passport applications. And it's funny because now that I'm going through it and looking back at it, I think I appreciate it more than when I was reading it. For the first, maybe third, I really enjoyed the book. And I think even though it's like quite big letters, it's a short book, it took me a while to get through it. And there were just certain bits that I just wasn't connecting with that were a bit too maybe like philosophical, dreamlike, like stream of consciousness. So while I'm happy that I read it, this wasn't something that while I was reading it I like intensely enjoyed. I'm gonna read the next one. I'm really curious to see what I'll think of it. I'm gonna read more of her work in general. I would just have moments where I'd read a sentence, I'd be like, oh, I love this, or like, I love this paragraph, but in the end I felt very conflicted and a little bit confused. Then the Dutch one that I brought along, it was a little flip back and it was called De Reunie, or The Reunion by Simone van der Vlucht, a Dutch author. I actually looked it up and I think this has been translated into English in case you're interested. I had read some of her YA children's historical fiction when I was younger and really enjoyed that. And this is basically the story of a young woman who has had to take away time from work, and when she comes back, the person that she had hired to help her out has actually like gone up in the ranks and has been like bad mouthing her around the office. She feels like there's this really hostile atmosphere. Then at the same time, she gets a message about a reunion of her old high school, and that brings up these memories of the friend or ex-friend at the time that she had, who disappeared. And she keeps thinking that maybe there is something more that she has kind of repressed, that she doesn't quite remember. She went to therapy after her friend disappeared. There's like all these little hints about what's happened to her. I actually really enjoyed this book. Part of it is set in a town on the Dutch coast, which like reminded me of my own hometown. And it was funny reading a book, because I read so much like English and American fiction, a book where someone just like hops on their bicycle and cycles to the coast, like all these little Dutch things. There's some really fun characters, there are some more threatening characters. Obviously there's going to be like a couple of red herrings in there. It's like a classic thriller, but I think especially trying to figure out if the people around the main character are being a bit weird to her or being quite mean, or if it's the main character herself. There's one bit where she is getting really annoyed at this colleague who is basically just bad-mouthing her to everyone else and putting everyone up against her. There's a note from that person on her desk when she comes into work, and she like rips up the note and puts it in an envelope and just deposits it on that person's desk, and is like, oh, first task of the day done, like it's a totally normal thing to do. I'm obviously not going to give away the twist in case you want to read it yourself, but I'd be interested to read more. I have another book that's kind of in the same genre that's Dutch as well that I'm going to be reading. I already talked about the next one in a recent video, and I'm going to be talking about it again probably in my like favorite books of the year so far, and it is Cersei by Madeline Miller. By now I feel like a lot of you already have heard about this, the story of Circe from Greek mythology, a character that's kind of, from what I've been told, has been like villainized, and you follow her from when she's, I mean, she lives eternally, but from when she's kind of a teenager to when she grows up a bit more. What she does to get banished to an island by herself, the adventure she goes on, the visitors she receives there, the different ways that she is hurt and builds up this shield and lashes out and learns more about herself and matures. Loved the writing style of this. There were a lot of things that felt like they were like crammed in there a little bit to just include all those different parts of the story, but this was the perfect read for Crete. She goes to visit her sister who lives in the Knossos Palace on Crete, and I took a picture of the book at that location, and it was amazing just reading this. If you're going to Greece, then this is the book you should be bringing. I feel like this is kind of like crossover YA, but is mostly just really engaging and massive page turner for me. So I didn't get to all of the books. I didn't finish the 5th season. I didn't even start The Girl in the Tower. I did start this borrowed copy of Outlander. I read, this is the last book I was reading as I was on holiday. I read up until the point where she goes to the stones, and then I was like, oh, maybe I'll rewatch the first episode of Outlander, and then I'll just watch the first bit, and then I won't go ahead of the books. It is now 3 weeks later, and I have rewatched all of Outlander, all 4 seasons. I hadn't seen the 4th season yet. I'm basically like back to being obsessed with it again. And I haven't read any more of the book, but now I will, because I have finished the series and I need more. So I'll be reading this. And then there was a surprise book that came up. It was one that I decided to not take on holiday, mostly because I thought it'd be quite a quick read and I didn't have that much space. And as soon as I came back, I picked it up again after having read the first chapter and just devoured it. So wanted to include that in here because, you know, I feel like I should have taken this on holiday. And it is Lullaby, which is the story of a young family with 2 children living in Paris. It's translated from French as well. And they have a nanny who comes highly recommended. But the book starts off with a scene that lets you know that the nanny has basically killed one of the children. From there, you go back to the beginning and you see how it all leads up to this moment. What I loved about this book is, again, and I guess it's like a little bit similar to the reunion, that tension of knowing that something's gonna go wrong. The people in this really are showing, you know, partly their worst sides. The little things that you can like get annoyed with people about and that stick around and that build up and build up. And also how little you can know about a person's life, even though you see them all the time. You just get to see different moments in their lives from different perspectives. And it just has this menacing atmosphere, and I really like this. So I'll definitely be picking up the next book by the author as well. So I was pretty happy with that in the end. I had a good reading time, even though I spent way too much time reading Autumn, I think. I should have made my way through that quicker, but it took some time to digest. If you are still going on holiday or need a good book for in the park, maybe some of these will work for you. If you want to know what I'm reading at the moment, I will put a link to my GoodReads in the description. I'm always currently reading like 20 books. If you've read any of these, of course, let me know what you thought in a comment below, and I will talk to you soon. Doei!